Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are listening to this episode of Coffee English. Today, I have something extraordinary to share with you, something that might completely transform how you approach English learning. Picture this situation. You walk into an English exam or job interview. You need to speak for several minutes about a topic. Instead of struggling to find words or making grammar mistakes, perfect English flows from your mouth naturally and confidently. People listening think you are simply expressing your own thoughts, but actually, you are using a secret weapon that memory experts have known for centuries. This episode will reveal the exact three-stage system that makes this possible. You will learn why most people fail at memorizing texts and discover the precise techniques that guarantee success. Most importantly, you will understand how memorized texts become the foundation for natural, spontaneous English speaking. By the end of this episode, you will have a complete blueprint for memorizing any English text effectively. Whether you are preparing for IELTS, TOEFL, or simply want to speak more naturally, this method will revolutionize your results. Here is something that might surprise you. Memory athletes, people who can memorize entire books or thousands of numbers, do not have special brains. Brain scans show their brains are completely normal. The only difference is that they know specific techniques that anyone can learn. One of these techniques is called chunking. Instead of trying to remember individual pieces of information, memory champions group related items together and connect them in chains. This is exactly what we need to do with English texts. Consider this simple example. If I asked you to remember the letters Q, U, I, C, K, L, Y separately, it would be difficult. But if I group them into the word quickly, it becomes effortless. The same principle applies to memorizing entire paragraphs and speeches in English. Before we dive into the successful method, let me explain why most people struggle with text memorization. They make three critical mistakes. First, they try to memorize before they understand. Imagine trying to remember a phone number in a foreign language when you do not even know what the individual digits mean. This is what happens when people jump straight into repetition without proper preparation. Second, they use passive repetition instead of active recall. They read the text over and over, thinking this will help them remember. But reading is not remembering. Your brain needs to actively retrieve information to make it permanent. Third, they skip the performance stage. They can remember the words quietly in their heads, but they never practice delivering the text naturally and confidently. So when they need to use it in real situations, it sounds mechanical and obviously memorized. Now let me share the system that actually works. I call it the chain method because you build your memory like a strong chain, link by link. The first stage is familiarity. This is where you become completely comfortable with every element of your chosen text. Think of this like getting to know a new neighborhood before you try to navigate it in the dark. Here is exactly what you do. First, read through your text several times to understand the general meaning. Do not worry about memorizing yet, just focus on comprehension. Next, examine every single word. If you encounter unfamiliar vocabulary, look it up and make sure you understand not just the definition, but how it fits into the context. For example, if your text contains the phrase, "take it for granted," make sure you understand this means, assume something will always be available without appreciating it. Then, work on pronunciation. Read each sentence aloud slowly and clearly. If you are unsure about pronunciation, use online dictionaries with audio features. Pay special attention to word stress and sentence rhythm. Here is the test for this stage. You should be able to read the entire text aloud smoothly while simultaneously understanding every word in your mind. If you stumble over pronunciation or meaning anywhere, spend more time in this stage. Let me give you a concrete example. Suppose your text begins, "Success requires dedication and perseverance through challenging times." In the familiarity stage, you would ensure you can pronounce perseverance correctly, understand that challenging times means difficult periods, and feel comfortable with the rhythm of the entire sentence. Stage 2 is absorption, and this is where the real memorization happens. This stage uses what I call the golden thread technique. Imagine your text as a necklace. Each section you memorize is like a bead on a golden thread. Your job is to find the perfect bead size, not so small that the process becomes tedious, not so large that it becomes overwhelming. For most English learners, the ideal bead size is between 5 and 8 words. Let me show you exactly how this works with our example sentence. Take the phrase, "Success requires dedication and perseverance." Read it once, then look away and try to recall it perfectly from memory. If you succeed easily, add the next section, "Through challenging times." Now practice. Success requires dedication and perseverance through challenging times. The key principle here is active recall. You must look away from the text and force your brain to retrieve the words from memory. This retrieval process is what moves information from short-term memory into long-term memory. But here is the crucial part that most people miss. You do not memorize one sentence, then move to the next sentence. Instead, you must practice the connections between sentences. These connections are what I call the weak links in your memory chain. Let me demonstrate this with a longer example. Suppose your text continues, "Success requires dedication and perseverance through challenging times. Many people give up when obstacles appear. However, true champions use difficulties as stepping stones." After you can remember the first sentence, do not immediately start on "Many people give up when obstacles appear." Instead, practice the transition. "Through challenging times, many people give up." Repeat this connection several times until it flows smoothly. This technique prevents the most common memorization problem, knowing individual sentences, but forgetting how they connect together. Sometimes you will encounter sections that simply refuse to stick in your memory. When this happens, you can use temporary memory aids, but remember, these are like training wheels on a bicycle. You will remove them later. For example, if you keep forgetting the phrase, "perseverance through challenging," you might create a mental image of a person climbing a mountain in a storm. The mountain represents challenges, and the climbing represents perseverance. This image helps you remember the difficult section until repetition makes it automatic. Another powerful technique is the first letter method. Write down only the first letter of each word in your troublesome section. For our example, SRD a PTCT, then practice reciting the full text while looking only at these letters. Here is something interesting you can try. After you have absorbed a section using the golden thread technique, test yourself by writing the text from memory. Do not just think it, actually write it down word by word. Then compare your version with the original. This reveals exactly where your memory has gaps. The final stage is Polish, and this transforms your memorized text from mechanical recitation into natural, compelling speech. In this stage, you are no longer just remembering words, you are performing them. Stand up straight, make eye contact with an imaginary audience, and deliver your text with appropriate emotion and emphasis. Pay attention to your voice. Where should you pause for effect? Which words deserve special emphasis? How can you vary your tone to keep listeners engaged? Practice your memorized text as if you are giving an important presentation. Use gestures that feel natural. Change your facial expressions to match the content. If your text discusses a problem, let concern show in your voice. If it describes a solution, sound confident and optimistic. This stage is what makes the difference between sounding like you memorized something and sounding like you are speaking from your heart. When you reach this level, listeners will never suspect that your fluent English came from memorization. Why does this three-stage approach work so effectively? Neuroscience research provides fascinating insights. When you memorize texts using active recall, the golden thread technique, you strengthen neural pathways in multiple brain regions simultaneously. You are not just using language areas, but also engaging memory systems, motor areas for speech production, and even emotional centers when you add meaning and performance. Studies show that people who regularly practice text memorization develop increased connectivity between brain hemispheres. This enhanced connectivity is exactly what researchers observe in the brains of highly fluent speakers. Moreover, memorized texts provide what linguists call formulaic sequences, ready-made chunks of language that fluent speakers use automatically. Instead of constructing every sentence word by word, you have complete patterns stored in memory that you can access instantly. Let me give you specific advice for implementing this method. Start with texts between 1 and 3 paragraphs long. Choose content that genuinely interests you, perhaps a famous speech, a poem, or an article about your favorite topic. Dedicate specific time blocks to each stage. Spend at least 2 sessions in the familiarity stage before moving to absorption. The absorption stage typically requires the most time, perhaps 5 to 7 practice sessions. The Polish stage might need only 2 or 3 sessions, but do not skip it. Keep a memorization journal. Record which sections gave you trouble and which techniques helped you overcome difficulties. This information becomes invaluable when you memorize future texts. Practice your memorized texts regularly, even after you have mastered them. Like physical fitness, memory requires maintenance. Review your memorized texts weekly to keep them sharp and available for spontaneous use. Today, I want to share a phrase that perfectly captures the essence of our memorization method. Our phrase of the day is, "Slow and steady wins the race." This comes from the famous Aesop fable about the tortoise and the hare, and it perfectly describes successful text memorization. Many people try to memorize texts quickly, like the speedy hare. They rush through the stages, skip important steps, and ultimately fail. But learners who follow the 3-stage method carefully, like the steady tortoise, achieve lasting success. You might use this phrase like this: I used to try memorizing entire paragraphs in one session, but I learned that slow and steady wins the race. Now I take time for each stage, and my memorized texts stay with me permanently. Let me summarize the key points that will transform your memorization practice. Remember the 3 stages. Familiarity builds understanding. Absorption uses active recall with the golden thread technique, and Polish transforms memory into natural performance. The golden thread technique is your most powerful tool. Find your optimal chunk size, usually 5 to 8 words, and practice active recall rather than passive repetition. Pay special attention to weak links between sentences, as these connections are what make memorized texts flow naturally. Never skip the Polish stage. This is what transforms mechanical memory into authentic, compelling speech that listeners will never recognize as memorized content. I challenge you to choose one short English text this week and apply this 3-stage method. Start small, follow each stage carefully, and experience the remarkable results for yourself. If this episode has given you new insights into memorization, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other English learners. Your support helps us continue creating content that makes a real difference in your learning journey. Thank you for joining me today on Coffee English. Remember, the goal of memorization is not to become a speaking robot, but to build a foundation of natural English patterns that support spontaneous, confident communication. The 3-stage chain method gives you the tools to make this happen. Take your time, follow the process, and trust that each stage builds toward fluency. Until our next episode, keep practicing, keep growing, and keep building those golden threads of English mastery.